Hey everyone, welcome to episode 1 of Making Gerald. This is a podcast about the making of my senior year capstone film at Ohio University called Gerald. The name itself is kind of silly and kind of jarring. A lot of people, I've either gotten compliments about how weird it is, or people just being like, Gerald, like that's such a weird name for a film, like why are you naming it that? And I kind of like that. I hope that if anything, there can be kind of a standout in terms of letterbox searches or whatever. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking a lot about just kind of my pitch of the film, really diving into the log line and the synopsis and where it's at. I have a draft of the script ready to go, and I keep workshopping it week by week. But also, I want to talk about my inspirations, kind of present this podcast, episode 1, as a pitch deck of sorts, describing what drew me to the themes of the story as well as the visuals, and also just provide kind of status updates about where we're at. I want to talk a lot about marketing and social media in this episode, as this is something that I have never promoted through this avenue, although a lot of my work experience and a lot of my jobs right now revolve around social media and creation and promotion. So yeah, right before we hop in though, on each episode I want to do kind of a physical media spotlight, and in this episode I'm going to be spotlighting True Stories by David Byrne on Criterion. I absolutely love the packaging of this. I could go crazy on each individual detail in it, but there's just so much to love. They put so much effort into this packaging. It comes with a CD of the True Stories soundtrack, which is wonderful. And the reason I'm spotlighting this on episode 1 is because, holy shit, dude, the amount of passion put into this film, as well as just the visual style that David Byrne is going for, it's literally like a pre-Wes Anderson aesthetic. It's like pre-diorama. It presents how to do color and how to do set pieces and how to present people as people, even if their kind of dialogue is stiff. It's kind of the point. It's David Byrne's whole perspective on life put into a film. Absolutely dear to my heart. Love it. Love the 4K restoration of it. Okay, on to talking the film. So, at surface level, Gerald is a film about a guy who unravels that the world around him is entirely manufactured by him, and he's living in a sitcom that he has kind of built within his thoughts. So, it's a very surrealist piece and definitely absurdist. It relies a lot on exposing and breaking the conventions of cinema and of performance and set design, which is something that I've always been fascinated by. I love Kiarostami. I love Nathan Fielder. Two kind of polar opposites, but they're both kind of doing a very similar thing about breaking how filmmaking, and for them specifically documentary, works. And I think for me, it's a lot more about breaking narrative filmmaking conventions, even though this is also a very narrative piece, right? It's obviously very much it's got an arc, it's got everything it needs, but there are also moments where, for example, set pieces are maneuvered on screen, and we see the set kind of rearranging, and we see that as sort of a depiction of the horror of what's happening in Gerald's world as everything unravels. I don't want to get too much more into it right now. The script is being rewritten a bunch and a bunch. And of course, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's very interested and invested in it, because then what would be the point in checking it out if it ever makes it to film festivals or, beyond OU School of Film? So, yeah, I'm just going to present the log line that I have right now, just kind of outwardly. Trapped in a looping sitcom suburbia, Gerald unravels that he's living in a manufactured reality and he must confront the comforting walls that his own mind created. So that's where I'm at right now. I don't want to go much deeper into the emotionality of the film and a lot of the darker subject matter of it, because I like the idea of a logline being sort of mysterious, right? It's supposed to kind of grab someone. And I feel like, similar to kind of how the Truman Show is pitched, you kind of know that it's about a guy who's trapped in a sitcom, but it goes so much beyond that. And of course, for mine, it's not really similar to the Truman Show at all, but in the way that we're pitching them, I guess it's kind of in a similar vein. So I'm going to jump into the inspirations for the film. There are so many movies that I love, that I adore. There's also TV shows that I'm going to mention here soon too. But there's so much media that contributed to this idea. I came up with this idea in my sophomore year of college, and I wrote it for a class. And the more I thought about my thesis, the more I thought about, or rather, the more I thought about my capstone, the more I was like, I can't imagine making a capstone that's not this. That's not this display of everything that I've come to love. I had a couple like romantic film ideas, a couple drama film ideas, but I thought, if there's ever an opportunity to express this creative passion and this niche that I've dug myself into so tightly, it's this. It's this moment, and I'm really excited to pursue it in December. So first off, I'm going to jump into films that express the themes that I'm going for. The first theme is existentialism. This film becomes a lot less about a manufactured world and a lot more about why Gerald manufactured this world. And a big part of that is existentialism and avoiding all of the problems that he's created over time. And his way to avoid those is to live in a suburbia, essentially, that he has created, that he's looped in. So films like Anomalisa by Charlie Kaufman, films like Seventh Seal by Bergman, the season finale of Evangelion of season one, even A Ghost Story. All of these movies and pieces of media are sort of representing a solo character who is lonely, and whether at the point, whether it's like the season finale of Evangelion where they come to their conclusions, or if it's more like Seventh Seal, about the process of coming to a conclusion. I think that existentialism is something that is huge with this film. I think it's something that is one of the main kind of character traits of Gerald, is that he is an existential person. And so he's kind of coping with things in a much different way than someone else might. So another theme that's kind of at the forefront is artificiality. One film that I watched that really brought this idea to light to me was Pleasantville, which I also kind of felt like was a pretty surface level narrative. I thought everything they were doing in terms of the creation and execution of it was wonderful, but I just felt like, at the end we were kind of just left with not much to think on. Other films that remind me of that are Wizard of Oz, some of David Lynch's stuff in Twin Peaks, One from the Heart with Francis Ford Coppola. So a lot of these are a lot about set manipulation and real set pieces and set creation. And a lot of this film to depict the artifice is definitely pulling from each of these. There's a very specific shot in One from the Heart where a tumbleweed that is clearly a prop just like rolls across the screen. And the whole thing is totally just like a piece of theater, but put to screen. And that's something that I'm really drawing from in this film, is I really want people to be able to clock that, oh, this sitcom is totally artificial, right? The set that we're living in is totally artificial. All of these props that Gerald's interacting with are like totally fake. And I think that'll be a really fun thing to break in the process of creating the film. Another theme is surrealism. Obviously, I mentioned this earlier. But, films like Adaptation by Charlie Kaufman. If you can't tell, Charlie Kaufman is a huge inspiration for this film. I love how he writes awkward characters, and Gerald is an extremely awkward character. But also films like Eraserhead, anything by Maya Deren. Even Beau is Afraid, the second act where Beau is living this alternative life that he's dreaming of in a way. And he's walking through just this surreal world that's, it feels like he's walking through like a children's book, essentially, with a bunch of set pieces kind of popping up that represent it. Each of these films showcases that you don't have to just stick to a a normal way of life in the filmmaking process. But also, in contrast to sci-fi, I think that films like these are really trying to show you like, hey, this is like a dream, or this is surreal, or this is weird. We're not living in a grounded world, and rather we're exploring something different. Next up is anxiety, which I guess is kind of a buzzword at this point. But shout out Dochi. There are so many films that depict anxiety on film to me, and I think this is another one of those surface level themes where it's like Gerald is totally an anxious man. This dude is like living through hell by, basically turning himself into a hermit. But oh my god, there are so many films. Lars and the Real Girl, Ryan Gosling depicts a wonderful, lonely man in that. Punch Drunk Love, Adam Sandler plays a lonely man so well in that. And then there are more extreme examples as well, like Hereditary. where Toni Collette is able to show us how horrendous the anxiety of like a death of a family member can be, which is also a little a core plot line in this, is that there was a death of a family member that sort of pushed Gerald to be the way that he is, and that's something that he's coping with through the creation of the film. So yeah, all of those are the big five themes. Basically, we have existentialism, we have artificiality, we have surrealism, we have anxiety. So I guess it's actually four total themes right now. But also, each of the films that I mentioned really is contributing to the visual style that I want to go for. I know I've already mentioned like Wes Anderson, um, and the idea of artifice and breaking convention. The big plan for this is to build a set. Shout out to my friend Rosemary, who is going to be our set designer. We've already signed on a whole bunch of art people and theater people ready to build the set. We have plans in the works, and that's going to be a big part of our crowdfund. We're hoping to raise about $3,000 to build the set alone, and then on top of that, we'll need food donations and other stuff. But yeah, that's going to be kind of the big spectacle of the film, is that hopefully we're going to have a set that we can maneuver and alter and use to actually break the conventions of cinema within the script. And the big plan, there's actually another visual inspiration that I have, which is actually the IFHY music video by Tyler, the Creator. Of course, a guy like me is mentioning Tyler, the Creator on the pod, but that music video, I had been struggling for so long. I had the visual inspiration in mind, super pastel-y, whether it's yellow or blue wallpaper with a bunch of fake things surrounding the protagonist. And I rewatched that music video, and it literally is Tyler, the Creator, in like a doll outfit surrounded by a plastic dollhouse world, basically. So I thought that was pretty funny. That's definitely a big visual inspiration. And if you can't tell from the films that I've mentioned as visual inspirations, this film is going to be very poppy. It's going to be sort of representative of Technicolor in a way. Obviously a little unachievable, but one of our big goals is to be able to showcase the idea of suburbia and dreams, thinking Blue Velvet, those opening sequences where everything is just so beyond poppy that it's like, all right, this shouldn't be looking like this. Why is this town so beautiful? And then obviously at its core, it's not beautiful. So stuff like that. I've been thinking a lot about how to do the most with color, but also maybe use color to our advantage in those moments and be able to take it away when we're going for dramatic beats. I hope that this episode isn't too vague. It feels a little tricky to dive into like the narrative elements of the film without doing like, a 10-page table read with the script. So I hope I'm doing the best that I can to explain those moments to you guys. But yeah, I mean, my visual goal is to achieve something with the set pieces, with the color, and with the idea of artifice and surrealism in mind to really showcase this world that Gerald has created. All right, now that I've talked inspiration and log lines and stuff like that, I really want to dive into the marketing side of it. I'm going to be talking about both why I'm making a podcast for the film and also how the social media journey is going. So as I think many of us do, I finished up all of my final college projects and exams and stuff in that last week of school in May. And as soon as everything was submitted and as soon as I had finished editing and screening the two thesis films that I was working on, my brain just went wild. And I had so many ideas, so many that were even beyond the scope of just making this film. And my brain was just so full of things. But one of the big things I wanted to do was really start promoting this film. And one of the big ways that I did that first was by actually fleshing out our website. So I used Adobe My Portfolio to make it, just so that, I can stick to a budget, because I don't want to do much, what's the word? I don't want to do much, overspending on things that aren't really needed. So if the domain name has a .my portfolio in it, I don't think it's the end of the world. Shout out Eli, though, for buying a domain for his, You're the Goat. Yeah, so my wonderful friend Kayla Giardinato actually made these little GIFs of essentially marquees with little lights flashing, and then I added text to each one. And now there's like clickable buttons for each. So if you go to geraldfilm.myportfolio.com, you can check those out. And you can just see very basic things about the film. So like we have an about page, we have a crew page that is slowly getting fleshed out as we sign more and more people on. Um, and we also have like a pitch deck in there and a little podcast page, which should be updating pretty soon once this episode is up. So I was really happy first to start off by actually just fleshing out the website and having something there so that once I made a social media page, people would just have somewhere to go to. Me and Kayla spent a lot of time working on the assets together. Or more Kayla worked on them, and then I was doing my best to communicate kind of what I wanted. And I think we totally achieved what we were going for there. And now I have those assets to use on social media and on the website, which is just absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Kayla. Yeah, so I made the website, and then the first post that I did on social media was a little eerie teaser of just like a spotlight turning on, and then like it says like website live or whatever, and then I linked people to it. And that was kind of like the initial hype video, and then I just started kind of spam following people and getting the followers up, and people slowly kind of trickled in. The next post that I did on Instagram, and by the way, these are on Instagram and TikTok right now. So I'm working on getting a Facebook page going, and then we'll also probably have a YouTube page going on the side. That's something I have to talk about a little bit more with the producers. But yeah, the second post that we made actually popped off pretty well, both on TikTok and on Instagram. So it's essentially like the first slide is like, you know how Charlie XCX said it's Ari Aster summer, because I feel like some of the moments in this film are pulling from Ari Aster films, and then I kind of just tied everything that this film is about. So Tim Robinson being anxiety. This film has a really sick drone soundtrack that my buddy Gabe is working on. Shout out Gabe. You're wonderful. I'm so happy to be working with you as a film composer duo. So I kind of showed that Ethel Kane just dropped a drone album and how I have a lot of drone inspiration for the making of this film. And then pulled some BoJack Horseman, pulled someone from the heart, like I talked about. In the last slide, I was like, I'm Owen Keller, and my film Gerald is influenced by all these pieces in some way. So I thought that this was a really fun way to pitch the film to people, and it worked. I mean, I got 56 likes on Instagram, and on TikTok, I got a lot of likes that were actually like organic, like explore page and for you page. So I must have just really hit the hashtags there, and people must have just been drawn to it because there weren't many people that I know that liked it. So I really made sure to follow the people that liked it and try to get them in their best interest to follow me back, and talked a little bit to some of the people about how the making of this film is going to go, and kind of hoping that they'll be along for the journey. So a lot of the TikTok and Instagram journey so far has just been about showing off, hey, we have this thing coming and we're trying to be a little mysterious, but here are some inspirations and here's what we're up to. And then now in the coming weeks, I'm going to be really posting to try and pull in social media managers and a podcast editor and clipper so that I can finally just put all of my effort toward the creative elements of the film. So right now we're going through script rewrites and we're going through casting. I realized that I was devoting way too much time to promoting and being obsessed with the idea of making a podcast and the social media. And even then, I haven't posted that much. It's more that like it was just another level of stress that was added onto my plate, and I decided to take a step back. So once we have a social media person and a podcast person, this thing is going to be smooth as butter, hopefully. So now I'm going to be talking about why I'm making a podcast for the making of this film. One of the big reasons is that I really want a newsletter. All of my wonderful family and friends, I really want them to know what I'm up to, especially if they plan on donating to me. But even if they're not donating to me, I just want people to know the process of the making of this film. And so rather than writing out a newsletter each week or bi-weekly or whatever, I thought it would be really fun to try and, do something different. So I'm exploring a podcasting certificate at Ohio University right now. So I was like, why not? Especially in the fall semester, I will have access to our podcast studio. So this thing is going to get pretty professional looking, hopefully, as long as and sounding, but hopefully it'll be pretty professional and it'll just be enjoyable to listen to. The other thing is like, anytime there is a piece of media that I like invent in my head. I'm like, why doesn't this exist? And one of those things that at least isn't at the forefront of like podcasting or video right now is just how to make a student film. So I thought maybe making a more free form sort of newsletter, audio newsletter, podcast, video, that people can latch onto, especially if they're emerging filmmakers, might be very helpful. So on the side of just being like a podcast about the creation of my film, my other goal is that each bi-weekly episode we can promote something to emerging filmmakers. Like, hey, on week 4 of making your film, you should be casting and you should have a script that's pretty locked down and things like that. And being able to show, hey, this is where we were at each week along the process. And then maybe even in the spring semester, being able to reflect back and be like, oh my God, I wish I had, had a shot list done 2 weeks earlier than I actually did, and things like that. I wish I had locked down my department heads in August instead of in whenever I get them done, which should be August, but, hypothetically. So yeah, that's the big goal of why I actually want to create a podcast for this rather than just leave it as a standard newsletter. I also think standard newsletters are great, but I really want to try something different. And if this doesn't work, then I'll just go back to making a standard newsletter and emailing all my family and friends about it. But for right now, we're going to stick with the podcast and see what happens. So today I hopped off a meeting with Spencer and Molly, my 2 wonderful producers for the film, and we're feeling pretty good about the creation of the film. The big thing right now is the crowdfunding launch. The big plan is to have it actually launch in mid-September now. So it went from, we started off wanting to just launch the GoFundMe in June, and obviously now it's about July. Had a meeting with our instructor, and she was like, hey, maybe you should just wait until September or whatever, right? So when I can actually have a big hard launch video ready to go that explains everything that I want and need from my family and friends, all of my monetary goals with the film, everything I'm planning to do, and have it be like a spectacle, like a teaser or a trailer that's like, hey, you should donate to this so that we can achieve this vision. Rather than just being like, hey, here's a link with like a little blurb, go ahead and donate to me, right? I would hate to do that. Like, I would much rather call each and every one of my family and friends than just send them a GoFundMe link. I'd rather explain it to each and every person. But at the end of the day, the smarter idea is to actually just make a video that showcases a little bit of the visual style, but more importantly, has me talking directly to the camera with a call to action, hoping to just get supporters for the film and everything like that. So the crowdfunding itself is, kind of on hold, right? Because I won't be able to actually film my crowdfunding video and link up with a lot of the people who I need to help build set pieces and stuff until we're back in school. So the big plan is to film that crowdfunding video right at the end of August. And then in September, in that first week of September, I'm just going to lock in on the video every day after work and school. And we will be hopefully rolling it out on like September 8th. I believe that's that Monday. So yeah, that's the big goal there. In terms of everything else, as I've kind of already mentioned, all I really am looking for right now is to start casting. So I need a casting director. And then I am really, really hoping to find a social media and a podcast person so that I can take a little bit off my plate and put more time into working with a casting director and also working on rewrites of my script, because to me a script is never done until you shoot it, as it should be. So yeah, that is everything going on with the film right now. I was also wondering, how long these episodes would be. It's looking like this one, once it's cut down, will be about 25 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. So maybe these will be ambiguous numbers depending on what we're doing each week. And if we have guests and things like that, which we will have guests later on, specific departments will come in and talk to me about specific things. So I'm really excited to move forward with this podcast. Hopefully it works out. Hopefully we can at least get some really good clips for TikTok and Instagram to showcase me, like real me with voiceover, explaining my love for filmmaking, but also, what I plan to do with the film and the process, and to keep people updated in that way. So thank you everyone for tapping into episode 1 of Making Gerald. I am really hoping that this will be successful. I really hope that over the next few months, I'll be able to achieve something both in showing off my creative outlets in filmmaking and by being able to put that out into the world to people who are interested in filmmaking and to the people who are supporting me along this journey. So thanks everyone for tapping in, and I'll see you guys later.